What's your emergency?
Hello? I'd like to report a murder.
Who's the victim?
Muhammad ibn Abdullah. I think he was poisoned.
Is this a friend or relative?
No, he's the prophet of Islam.
And when was this?
Well, it was almost 14 centuries ago, but don't you guys have like a cold case file or something?
Not for that long ago.
Not for that long ago. Listen, lady, do you have any clue how important this case is? I've got Sunnis telling me a Jewish woman poisoned him. I've got Shias telling me Aisha poisoned him. And I want to know who killed... Hello? She hung up. Guess I'll have to solve this one myself. Through a careful investigation of Islam's most trusted sources. By the way, to all my Muslim friends out there who've never bothered to read your most trusted sources, may I say in advance, moi ha ha. All right, I've gone through the Quran, the Hadith, the Tafsir, and the Sirah literature, and I think I've finally solved the mystery of Muhammad's death. Can you imagine solving a 1,400-year-old murder mystery by carefully re-examining the evidence? That kind of makes me the ultimate cold case detective, doesn't it? Take that, J. Warner Wallace. Cracking this case was actually pretty straightforward. The Muslim sources tell us that Muhammad was poisoned. All we have to do is take everything we know about how Muhammad was killed and ask ourselves, who would have killed him in that particular way? Police do this sort of thing every day. They match up a bullet with the gun that fired the bullet. They match up fingerprints with the person who left the fingerprints. They match up details of a crime with a criminal who has a certain MO. So, to figure out who killed Muhammad, we just need to do a little profiling. The main difficulty we face here is that lots of people wanted to kill Muhammad. The pagans wanted to kill him for conquering their cities, smashing their idols, slaughtering their men, raping their women, and enslaving their children. Jews wanted to kill him for seizing their land, destroying their communities, slaughtering their men, raping their women, and enslaving their children. Christians wanted to kill him for threatening to conquer them. Men wanted to kill him. Women wanted to kill him. Old people wanted to kill him. Young people wanted to kill him. Muhammad made a lot of enemies. Fortunately, we can narrow down our list of suspects by ruling out people who would have killed Muhammad in some way other than poisoning. Certain killers like to strangle their victims. They're not going to use poison. Some people prefer knives. Some people set fires. Some people push their victims off cliffs. Colonel Mustard wouldn't poison anyone. He'd use a lead pipe in the ballroom. Interestingly, the Quran tells us how Allah would have killed Muhammad. We find Allah's MO, his preferred method of executing false prophets, in Surah 69, verses 44 to 46. According to the Quran, if Muhammad were to invent a false revelation, if he were to fabricate verses of the Quran, Allah would kill him by severing his aorta. The aorta is the artery that comes out of the left ventricle of your heart. It's also called the life artery. Let's look at 4 translations of Surah 69, verses 44 to 46, so we can get a clear idea of what the passage is saying. The Hilleli Khan translation reads, "And if he, Muhammad, had forged a false saying concerning us is Allah because he's plural sometimes, we surely would have seized him by his right hand, or with power and might, and then we certainly would have cut off his life artery." And in parentheses, the translators add, aorta. The Pickthall translation declares, "And if he had invented false sayings concerning us, we assuredly had taken him by the right hand and then severed his life artery." The Sahih International translation reads, "And if he, i.e. Muhammad, had made up about us some false sayings, we would have seized him by the right hand. Then we would have cut from him the aorta." M.H. Shakir renders these verses, "And if he had fabricated against us some of the sayings, we would certainly have seized him by the right hand. Then we would certainly have cut off his aorta." And just so we're clear on the meaning and no one accuses me of misrepresenting the passage, let me read one of the most popular Muslim commentaries on these verses. This is Tafsir Jalalain. And had he, namely the prophet, fabricated any lies against us by communicating from us that which we have not said, we would have assuredly seized him. We would have exacted vengeance against him as punishment by the right hand, by our strength and power. Then we would have assuredly severed his life artery, the aorta of the heart, a vein that connects with it, and which, if severed, results in that person's death. So, if Muhammad had been a false prophet, a liar, a deceiver, a fraud, phony, a cheat, a con artist, we know how Allah would have killed him. Allah would have severed his aorta. As long as no one severs Muhammad's aorta, then, we can rule out Allah as a suspect. Now that we've got our methodology, let's turn to the Muslim sources so we can piece together a profile of Muhammad's murderer. According to Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and other texts, Muhammad was poisoned by a Jewish woman. Sahih al-Bukhari, 26:17. A Jewess brought a poisoned cooked sheep for the Prophet, who ate from it. She was brought to the Prophet, and he was asked, "Shall we kill her?" He said, "No." Anas added, "I continued to see the effect of the poison on the palate of the mouth of Allah's messenger." People could see the effect of the poison in Muhammad's mouth. The poison apparently disfigured his palate, making his mouth look strange. Sahih Muslim 5705. It was narrated from Anas that a Jewish woman presented some poisoned lamb to the messenger of Allah, and he ate some of it. She was brought to the messenger of Allah, and he asked her about that. She said, "I wanted to kill you." He said, "Allah will never give you the power to do that." Or he said, "To me, Allah will never give you the power to do that to me." They said, "Shall we kill her?" He said, "No." He said, this is Anas, "And I continued to see its effects on the uvula of the messenger of Allah." Notice two things here. One, Muhammad tells this woman, "Allah will never give you the power to kill me." I guess Muhammad didn't know Allah very well because, as we're about to see, the poison ultimately did kill him. Two, Anas could see the effects of the poison on Muhammad's uvula. That's the part that hangs at the back of your throat. So, when Muhammad opened his mouth, his companions could see, on the roof of his mouth all the way back towards the uvula, the damage caused by the poison. In case you're wondering why this woman wanted to poison Muhammad, she tells us in Ibn Sa'd, Volume 2, page 252. The Apostle of Allah sent for Zaynab bint al-Harith, that's the woman who poisoned him, and said to her, "What induced you to do what you have done?" She replied, "You have done to my people what you have done. You have killed my father, my uncle, and my husband. So I said to myself, if you are a prophet, the foreleg will inform you. And others have said, if you are a king, we will get rid of you." The woman poisoned Muhammad because he slaughtered her father, her uncle, and her husband. That isn't motive. I don't know what is. So Muhammad slaughtered her family, and she retaliated by poisoning him. Open and shut case, right? Wrong, because there's a plot twist here, my friends. You see, Zaynab didn't act alone. She had a partner, an accomplice, a co-conspirator, someone working behind the scenes, pulling the strings, a mastermind so brilliant and diabolical he can only be described as the best of plotters. Let's see if we can unmask the true architect of the plot to murder Muhammad. Sahih al-Bukhari, 44:28. Narrated Aisha, "The Prophet, in his ailment in which he died, used to say, 'O Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison.'" What's that, Muhammad? Something about your aorta being cut? That's strange. I seem to recall someone telling us that if he were going to kill you for being a false prophet, he'd do it by severing your aorta. I should also point out that the words "as if" are not in the Arabic. They were added by the translator. Muhammad simply says, "I feel my aorta being cut from that poison." But let's keep reading. Sunan Abu Dawud, 4498. The hadith starts with some text about Muhammad receiving presents. Then we have, this version adds, so a Jewess presented him, Muhammad, at Khaybar with a roasted sheep, which she had poisoned. The messenger of Allah ate of it, and the people also ate. He then said, take away your hands from the food, for it has informed me that it is poisoned. Bishr ibn al-Bara ibn Marur al-Ansari died. So he, the Prophet, sent for the Jewess and said to her, what motivated you to do the work you have done? She said, if you were a prophet, it would not harm you. But if you were a king, I should rid the people of you. The messenger of Allah then ordered regarding her, and she was killed. He then said about the pain of which he died, I continued to feel pain from the morsel which I had eaten at Khaybar. This is the time when it has cut off my aorta. This is the time when it has cut off my aorta. Didn't someone tell us in the Quran that he would kill Muhammad by cutting off his aorta? By the way, if you're wondering why some passages say that Muhammad let Zaynab live while other passages say that he executed her, scholars harmonize the passages by saying that Muhammad initially allowed her to live, but that once Bishr died, he had her executed. Speaking of Bishr, notice the passage says that Muhammad's companion Bishr died from eating the poison. Interestingly, before Bishr died, he told Muhammad that as soon as he put the poisoned lamb in his mouth, he could taste the poison. But he ate it anyway, because he saw Muhammad eating it. Ibn Sa'd, Volume 2, pages 251 to 252. Then the apostle of Allah, may Allah bless him, said, come closer and have a night meal. The apostle of Allah, may Allah bless him, took the foreleg, a piece of which he put into his mouth. Bishr ibn al-Bara took another bone and put it into his mouth. When the apostle of Allah, blah, 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 ate one morsel of it, Bishr ate his, and other people also ate from it. Then the apostle of Allah, blah, 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 said, hold back your hands, because this foreleg, and according to another version, the shoulder of the goat, has informed me that it is poisoned. Thereupon Bishr said, by him who hath made you great, I discovered it from the morsel I took. Nothing prevented me from emitting it out, spitting it out, but the idea that I did not like to make your food unrelishing. When you had eaten what was in your mouth, I did not like to save my life after yours, and I also thought you would not have eaten it if there was something wrong. Bishr did not rise from his seat, but his color changed to that of telsan, a green cloth. Bishr turned green and died because he trusted Muhammad. Muhammad died too. His pain and sickness just lasted much longer. In Sunan Abu Dawud, Muhammad even described his pain to Bishr's mother. Sunan Abu Dawud 4499. Narrated Ibn Ka'b ibn Malik on the authority of his father, Mubashir, Bishr's mother, said to the Prophet during the sickness of which he died, what do you think about your illness, Messenger of Allah? I do not think about the illness of my son except the poisoned sheep of which he had eaten with you at Khaybar. The Prophet said, and I do not think about my illness except that. This is the time when it cut off my aorta. There's that aorta again. The History of At-Tabari, Volume 8, page 124. The messenger of God said during the illness from which he died, the mother of Bishr ibn al-Bara had come in to visit him. Bishr, at this very moment I feel my aorta being severed because of the food I ate with your son at Khaybar. Okay, Muhammad, we got the point about your severed aorta. According to Aisha, Muhammad was in total agony before his death. Sunan ibn Majah, 1622. Aisha said, I never saw anyone suffer more pain than the Messenger of Allah. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even walk on his own. His followers had to drag him around. Sahih al-Bukhari, 2588. Narrated Az-Zuri, Ubaydullah bin Abdullah told me that Aisha had said, when the Prophet became sick and his condition became serious, He requested his wives to allow him to be treated in my house, and they allowed him. He came out leaning on two men, while his feet were dragging on the ground. He was walking between Al-Abbas and another man. Well, he wasn't really walking if his feet were dragging on the ground while two guys propped him up. I guess we know where they got the plot for Weekend at Bernie's. Now, since the Quran says that if Muhammad were a false prophet, Allah would sever his aorta, and Muhammad eventually admitted that he could feel his aorta being severed, you might think we have a pretty good reason to reject Muhammad and his revelations. But you're wrong. If you look more closely, you'll see that we have at least 10 good reasons to reject Muhammad and his revelations. First, think about Muhammad's argument in the Quran. If I'm a false prophet, Allah will cut my aorta.